This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Chris Graham. We're going to talk some UVA sports today. I've got Scott German with me. We're going to talk, we'll start with UVA basketball. It's not basketball season anymore, but it's the great news last week, and I was busy with VMI baseball. We weren't able to break it down, but Scott, big news. DeAndre Hunter is coming back for his redshirt sophomore season, and I don't think we can possibly overstate how good a bit of news this is for UVA basketball. DeAndre Hunter is going to be a key player, obviously, for this team next year. Your thoughts, Scott, when you first heard this news? Mine were, woo, okay, good. Next year's going to be good. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I really, since the loss down in Charlotte, which I'm not going to elaborate on any further than that, but really I thought a lot about, I just assumed, I guess my assumption was that he clearly was not going to declare because of his injury. So I really wasn't paying a lot of attention to it because I didn't think there was that much of a possibility. But then after you hear him come right out and say that he's going to come back to school, it kind of makes you wonder possibly how close was he to maybe deciding to forego the rest of his eligibility. So, but it is good news, certainly he's an all-ACC candidate player, and to replace him would have been difficult. So, maybe some good things are starting to happen to the basketball program again.
Yeah, so I think we actually cover both sides of the UVA divide here. Let's say it that way. Because, Scott, you weren't even thinking that this was a possibility. And for me, I hadn't thought about it either. And then about a week before he made the final call on Friday of this past week, the deadline was Sunday night at midnight to declare for the draft. And, of course, even if you declare for the draft, you can come back if you don't hire an agent, that kind of thing. But about a week out from Hunter's announcement, I started reading some articles, different places, with speculation that, hey, maybe he really is thinking about leaving, even with that injury. The wrist injury, the surgery was a 10 to 12-week recovery period, which would have put him towards actually, it would have put him way back. I'm not sure he would have even really been able to showcase himself for NBA teams. He wouldn't have been able to play in any of the invitational tournaments or any of those kind of things, the combines and that kind of thing. So it would have really put a crimp in his style if he had decided to go. He would have been, limited to what scouts could have gotten from him, well, from interviews, but also from what they saw during the season. They wouldn't be able to see anything up close and personal in those tryout kind of settings, those scrimmage kind of settings, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, about a week out, all of a sudden you're hearing, hey, maybe he's thinking about going, and his, maybe the injury would have pushed that timetable up a bit, and his brother maybe is pushing him in a certain direction, this kind of thing. The brother who, was last year the one who raised issue when DeAndre was redshirting and was questioning why was DeAndre redshirting. So, all of a sudden it got me very nervous to a point where I didn't even want to look at the news anymore. And then I'm sure there's people like me who saw the news and said, yeah, okay, good, we can breathe again. And then I'm sure people like you, Scott, who didn't even think this was news, and then all of a sudden, like, wait a second, why is he announcing this? He was coming back all along, right? So I'm sure those were the mixed reactions from the UVA basketball universe. Either people like me who were so nervous and so very happy that DeAndre's coming back, or people like you, like, wait a second, he was thinking about leaving? How close were we to this? This would have been disastrous. Kind of an interesting place for our fan base to be.
Yeah, as I said, now that it's over with, you kind of take a deep breath and say, wow, was it really something he was seriously considering? But which makes you believe that had he not had a hand injury, had he played, and Virginia may have won a couple of games in the tournament, then it kind of makes you think he would not have come back. So not saying him having a hand injury was a good thing, but because it was not. Clearly it was not. But, it does make you think what scenarios would have unfolded had DeAndre played on through and continued to excel, but like he finished the season, like he finished the regular season anyway.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where you say he would have continued to excel. I mean, and plus his status with the NBA front offices would have still been the same no matter what. And I think it's the wrist injury that probably. I mean, he's not really talked about. What factors led to him deciding to come back. It was more just, hey, I'm coming back. But the wrist injury not allowing him to showcase himself got to be key to this because, yeah, I mean, I think if even if UVA loses the first game with him in the lineup in the NCAA tournament, I think he's still thinking about going pro. I mean, because we know this guy. One thing we can say with how we watch UVA basketball, we have the ability because we are credentialed members of the media, and we're there for all the home games, some road games, tournament games, everything else. We get that different experience of especially at JPJ. I remember, Scott, the first couple games this year. We're talking to some of the guys who were there from NBA scouting, from NBA team scouting and that kind of thing. The guys like Matt Doherty and others. Who are there just watching they're there watching the team, they're watching the UVA players, they're watching the opposing team's players, and I think it was early in the season, Scott, you asked one of the guys, hey, who are you here watching? And the first name that came out was DeAndre Hunter, and we hadn't really seen DeAndre Hunter much at that point. He didn't really start playing good basketball, for UVA on a regular basis until the ACC part of the season. We're talking about back in November. When nobody knew who DeAndre Hunter was except for, hey, he's this intriguing guy who redshirted last year. And the scouts were telling us DeAndre Hunter's who we're here to see. Not Kyle Guy, not Devin Hall, not Isaiah Wilkins. DeAndre Hunter, this kid that you've never seen play, we're here to see play. So the NBA knew last year that DeAndre Hunter was somebody they liked, and he redshirted last year. So, and then you see what he did in the ACC this year. He was dominant against Syracuse. He had that great game against Duke. He had solid games up and down I think it was the Florida State game. He had another one, of course, the game-winning shot against Louisville. But yeah, he's a guy that's been on their radar even since his redshirt season. So we knew that all along, and then he went out and performed to those expectations. So yeah, I think we've got him for one more year. I think that's it. I don't think we got him for the rest of his career at UVA. That redshirt's not going to really work. He's going to play next year, and then he's going to the NBA.
Right, unless he digresses, and which we don't think that'll happen. We don't want that to happen. This is just with the current rules in place. This is with the NBA not having any type of rule as they do in MLB, where if you play college, you go to college, you have to play at least 3 years or stay at least 3 years before you're draft eligible. No such provision exists in college basketball. So yeah, let's hope he goes out and becomes a first team All-American next year. That just bodes well for the season because the chances of Andre being here after next season are slim to none.
And I'll continue. I want to continue, kind of maybe shelve right now for a few minutes the discussion of DeAndre and what he'll do next year for UVA, because I wanted to talk about a possible graduate transfer. We know that Tony Bennett has talked about he's going to go on the grad transfer market. He did well last year with that. Nigel Johnson filled in admirably as a reserve player coming in from Rutgers and filled a role in the backcourt in the off the bench that was very helpful to this UVA team. And so we know, and Bennett said after the season that, yes, we're going to look to the grad transfer market to try to find, plug a couple holes. Now with DeAndre back, DeAndre Hunter, I will say this, he gives you that flexibility. He can play in the post, he can play in the backcourt, he can play either place. So now, now if you're Tony Bennett, you're out there looking, DeAndre's back. Of course, that Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome are back. Of course, Jack Salt's back. You've got other guys around. You can either find a good guard or a good forward, and then DeAndre can move as he needs to because he'll be effective no matter where you put him. That's the case. And so the name that pops up in the last couple of weeks as having interest as a possible grad transfer to come to UVA is someone actually we should be familiar with, Keyshawn Woods, former Wake Forest guard. He's graduating from Wake Forest next month, and he's already visited UVA. And he's a guy that can actually have an impact at UVA. He scored 11 points a game this past season at Wake Forest. He's a guard, so you put him in at guard, then DeAndre can play in the front court and start at the 4 position. And one thing about the grad transfer market that's a question sometimes is sometimes you see a guy transfer from a mid-major conference or a small conference and come to a ACC school. We saw Nigel Johnson come from Rutgers, the worst team in the Big Ten, and fill in as a bench player for Virginia. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's played in the ACC, Keyshawn Woods, the last 3 years. He scored 11 points a game in the ACC last year for Wake Forest. He knows the conference, and boy, if Virginia's able to land him, that'd be a huge get. I think you pencil him in the starting lineup, and then next year's UVA team. I'm thinking, Scott, I mean, to me, if Keyshawn Woods comes in, DeAndre Hunter's back, I think Virginia is the preseason favorite in the ACC.
Probably so, because he does. Well, let me just say this before I give you my thoughts on him deciding to come play at UVA. Maybe I'm just probably a little old school. I'm older than you, so I'll go back a little bit further. There's just something that's a little bit uncomfortable about a player transferring from 1A. No, he's not transferring. I think there may be one of these unwritten rules or laws or code of conduct that the players don't transfer from one school to the next. I don't know, in the conference. I don't know if that's actually something that's the ACC imposes or not. He's not a transfer, so I know
he would be. I'll interrupt. He would be a transfer, and Cam Johnson transferred from Pitt to UNC last year, and he's got another year of eligibility. So there used to be an unwritten rule, but it's way back in the rear view. Yeah.
Okay, so having said that, it does make me a little uncomfortable. But if it's something that's happening now, then it's like the shift in Major League Baseball. I can't stand it, but the more you see it, and the more you watch it, you see it happening all the time. I think it would be, I agree. It would be humongous if they were to add him. It would be a tremendous addition. I think that thinking about watching him play, and I only watched him play a couple of times, one against us, is that he's versatile, and I would assume that he's probably going to start. If he starts, it's going to be as a guard, which means if he starts as a third guard, then that would certainly free up the option of moving Hunter to 4, and or I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking it out. I think it's more likely that Diakite would start at 4, maybe with Hunter at the third guard and Woods coming off the bench at the start. I don't know. I think it just it does seem like it would make this team a lot more versatile. I'm just trying to think where he would best fit in, and I think where he best fits in is he best fits in a number of different scenarios.
I think, when I'm starting to think through it, I think that we know that Tony Bennett loves Jack Salt, who doesn't put numbers on the board, but plays defense, sets screens, and does what Tony expects a 5 to do in his system. I think that, to me on paper, Diakite could start for this team, but I think, I would love to see, honestly, I think the best lineup would be if you get a Keyshawn Woods coming in at guard. I think your best lineup would be Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, Keyshawn Woods in the backcourt, and then Hunter and Diakite in the front court. Have Salt come off the bench and be your first bench guy. Jay Huff, we all want to see play a lot more next year as well, but we know he's coming off rotator cuff surgery, so he's going to be delayed. He's got 3 or 4 months of recovery from that, and you hear about people who have that kind of surgery. Torn labrum, I think is what it was, actually, not rotator cuff, but torn labrum surgery. That we're hearing 3 or 4 months, but those kind of injuries can be longer term recovery than that. So even assuming he does get back and gets back in the gym in 3 or 4 months, Huff's not going to be able to do a lot of basketball stuff until that period's up, and that's almost, right around the time that we'll be getting ready to start the camp in October. So, yeah, Diakite, Salt, Hunter in the front court. Maybe Huff, gets in as the season rolls on. He gets himself back into basketball shape, that kind of thing. And then you've got Jerome and Guy, and then Woods. You've still got some returning guys from last year as well. But I think it's the flexibility that both. And you look at what Woods did last year. I pulled his numbers up real quick. 11.9 points a game, 26 minutes a game last year. He scored in double figures in 20 games. And this is for a Wake Forest team that wasn't that good. He's a guy that, you would key on because you knew that if, he's one of those guys, you stop him, you'll make Wake Forest work harder to get baskets. And so if he comes to Virginia and he's not the first, he's not the guy you're building your defensive game plan around as an opponent, because you've also got to worry about Kyle Guy, you've also got to worry about Jerome, you've also got to worry about DeAndre Hunter. He could be much more effective, more efficient at a place like Virginia with a lot of good players around him. But yeah, I agree with you, Scott. I think it gives a lot of flexibility to have a guy like that come in, and he's an ACC tested guy. You're not having to worry about, hey, was he just good in the Big South, or was he just good in the Patriot League, or is he ACC good? We know he's ACC good. Now we just have to figure out how to get him in the system and teach him the pack line defense.
And that's something that I wonder too. Not trying to cast negativity on the possibility of him coming to Virginia, but he's got 1 year to play, 1 year eligibility. To me, how much does he really want to come in and play in a system where it doesn't matter how much he can contribute or how well he can contribute offensively. If he doesn't pick up the pack line, he's just going to come to UVA and be another bench player. So, he's got to be comfortable with that. He's got to be sure that he's going to be able to come right in and pick up that pack line defense. Because we've seen other talented players, riding the tides, until they're able to contribute defensively. So I'm wondering, if that's if that has any factor in maybe him deciding to come here, or maybe going to a school where he literally just is being brought in as a hired offensive gun.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a great point. It comes to mind. Tony has said he's going to go on the grad transfer market, so whoever comes in as a grad transfer would have those same issues. The pack line and the motion offense, both are hard to pick up. Either one of them individually would be hard, but you got to pick them both up to be able to play right away at UVA. Now, one factor that's very helpful, potentially very helpful, we'll see when the news comes up, but he actually had already transferred once. He transferred from Charlotte to Wake Forest, and the Charlotte connection is really important. Of course, we know Ron Sanchez is the new coach at Charlotte, but also Orlando Vandross, one of the new assistants at Virginia, who had been the director of player development, got bumped up now to a full assistant job. Vandross was actually at Charlotte when Keyshawn Woods was recruited and played there for a year, and he only transferred out. Woods did. He only transferred out of Charlotte because there was a coaching change, and he left when the coaching change was made. So he's got a tie to a Virginia assistant coach, which has to be helpful, and so there's familiarity, which could be a helpful thing. I agree with you, Scott, in this one sense. If I'm him making a decision, what factors in my decision? Do I want to go somewhere and potentially sit? Do I want to go somewhere and play? I think about if I'm Tony Bennett and staff, and I'm trying to pitch this kid, and of course they are because they hosted him for a visit last Wednesday. So if I'm pitching him on what benefits there are to Virginia, no, I'm not guaranteeing you anything. I can't guarantee you'll start. I can't guarantee you a number of minutes. But I can tell you this: Joe Harris, Malcolm Brogdon, Justin Anderson, Mike Scott, London Parentes are all in the NBA right now. And you think you're an NBA player, you scored 12 points a game at Wake Forest last year, you think you're an NBA player, we got those guys in the NBA. You have one good year here, and we'll improve your stock. So I mean, though, that could be part of the thinking process if you're Keyshawn Woods. I could go play somewhere to mid-major and put big numbers up, but then my career's probably over because if you go somewhere else and put big numbers up in a mid-major conference, does the NBA even care? Or I can go to Virginia, maybe work my way in the starting lineup, put some good numbers up there at a school where guys who put good numbers up are playing the NBA right now. Maybe that's part of his thinking too. We won't know until we hear where he announces. But to me, that could be part of the sales pitch that he would have heard last week from Tony and Orlando Vandross and staff.
And if you do have those aspirations, which I'm sure he does. I'm looking at his stats now. He's 6'3", 205 pounds. He's averaged 12 points a game, 2.5 rebounds, just about 2 assists per game. Shot almost 38% from 3-point. So he's got the potential. Here's what I would, if I were in that mode, and I felt like I had one more year. You and I talked most off and on all season, and we were very surprised. I'm very surprised that Danny Manning still has a job at Wake Forest. I can't believe they didn't make a coaching change. So maybe coming in and playing under a coach that is such a claimed as Coach Bennett is. Maybe he improves his defense. Maybe he has something he feels like he needs to work on in order to be able to position himself to be an NBA type player the year after that. So, I don't think he was. I'm not saying Manning was a bad coach, but I don't know if it was recruiting or whatever. But he certainly hasn't had very good teams at Wake Forest since he's been there. So maybe for someone like Woods, it's a matter of wanting to come and get coached by someone like Bennett and his staff to just kind of elevate that part of his game.
That's without knowing, that's what I'm thinking. The only reason I would even visit Virginia if I were Keyshawn Woods would be that part of the thinking is, I know I can score. You put the numbers out there well, Scott. 12 points a game, 38% 3 points. I mean, I think he may not score 12 a game for Virginia if he plays for Virginia next year and even starts. He may not score 12 a game because Virginia plays a slower pace, we know, and all this. But he's going to be a more efficient player because, you're going to have guys like Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy and DeAndre Hunter setting you up. Those guys get the attention of the defense. They get the opposing coach's attention when they're drawing up the game plan defensively. And so you're going to get more opportunities to, you're not getting the best defensive guard guarding you like you did last year at Wake Forest. You're getting probably the third best guy out there guarding you on the perimeter. So, you're gonna be able to take advantage of that. And plus, then, one thing that UVA guys, we saw this last week. Justin Anderson doesn't play much for Philadelphia, but he set the tone for one of those playoff wins for the Sixers against Miami. He was inserted in the game because Dwayne Wade had been going off for a couple of games in that series. Philadelphia knows that you throw Justin Anderson in the mix, he'll play defense for a while for you. He's so frustrated Dwayne Wade defensively that Dwayne Wade, pushes him to the ground, gets a technical foul. It throws his whole game off, throws Miami off. Now the series is 3-1. A lot of folks are attributing that to the tone that Justin Anderson set defensively. As a bench player coming off the bench for a team with all the talent that Philadelphia's got, Justin Anderson's defense sets the tone for that series right now. And so that's what Virginia guys do in the NBA. Malcolm Brogdon, all of a sudden Terry Rozier was going off in the Boston-Milwaukee series. Malcolm Brogdon's in the starting lineup now, and you're not hearing Terry Rozier's name so much. So that's what Virginia guys do in the NBA. If you're Keyshawn Woods and you're thinking about where you're going to go, you got one more year to play basketball. What can you do to enhance yourself to make the NBA guys look at you a little more closely? You can learn how to play defense like Malcolm Brogdon and Justin Anderson, and that'll give you an extra leg up on those other guys who are competing for those jobs. And it can't hurt you, having a guy then like Tony Bennett who played guard as well in the NBA for 3 years, he can probably teach some things there too. But it's the defense it's what gets these guys in the NBA from UVA.
Exactly, and that's my. If there is a pendulum that might swing towards Virginia, I have been reading uh, some other information on it that he's currently considering Louisville, Ohio State, and Clemson as well. So, Louisville's just had a coaching change, so that would also be a going to another conference school. He's from Gastonia, North Carolina, so staying in Virginia, going to Virginia would certainly be closer to home. So, yeah, I hope that he does decide to come to Virginia. I think it provides a lot of versatility to the Cavaliers, but it does look like there are some other big time programs that have reached out to him as well.
Oh yeah, and there should be. He's a talented player, and that's the way the game's played now. The transfer market is what it is, and actually the NCAA is even thinking about giving you a chance, giving undergrads a chance, a one-time chance to transfer. It's not going to be in effect for this year, but I think it's going to be something we'll see in the next couple of years for undergrads to be able to transfer one time and play immediately at their next school. So, but yeah, we know Tony's going to go on the market here. This is the only name we're really seeing. It would be very intriguing. And then getting back to DeAndre Hunter, then so he's back. He'll be in the fold. We know that the NBA loves the guy, and we love the guy as well. Thinking ahead to next year, he gets starters minutes next year. He averaged, I'm looking at the numbers here, he averaged around 20 minutes a game this year for Virginia, but that was because he was behind Isaiah Wilkins primarily in the front court. See his numbers jump up 30, 32 minutes a game. Kyle Guy was a third-team All-American this year, first-team All-ACC player. I think that certainly DeAndre Hunter has that potential to join Kyle Guy on the first-team All-ACC, and if he plays anything like we saw down the stretch in ACC play this year, he's got a great chance to be a first-team All-American next year, and be a kind of Malcolm Brogdon-like presence on this team. Brogdon, for all the attention Virginia gets for keeping its the scoring averages of his players down, he averaged 18.8 a game his last year at UVA. So I think Hunter's got that potential with his ability to drive to the basket, score in the post, also hit the three. He can do it all for this Virginia team, and he stays healthy and plays like he should. He'll be that type. I think he'll have a Malcolm Brogdon-like presence for this team. I want to get your thoughts on that, Scott.
I agree. I think that just his experience that he brings back. There's not going to be, as long as Tony Bennett is in Charlottesville, I don't think you're going to see a player with some gaudy scoring numbers. That's just not. It's first of all, analytically, it's almost impossible because they don't have possession to substantiate someone, having a 25-point scoring average. And two, the way Tony distributes the offense, the way it progresses through look and screens, it takes, it keeps the number of possessions down. But I think he's going to bring a lot of experience. And next year's team, I'm thinking about it. We can't. The one thing you like to do as a fan, or I do, is you kind of compare back. Are we ahead? Are we behind where we were last year? That's something that we, as a fan, we want to probably get out of that mindset from the very get-go, because that's almost going to be an impossibility to think that we could be ahead of where we were last year as far as having a better record in the conference, or should we go undefeated on the road again? But that doesn't mean at the end of the season we're going to be a better team. And that's kind of the mindset I'm working towards now. Is we may not have as gaudy of a record, but at the end of the season, the talent that Virginia has, that we're going to put on the floor night in, night out, it's going to be a Final Four type caliber team.
Yeah, I really hope for the sake. One, you can't replicate 31-2 when you start the NCAA tournament. That's just going to be impossible to do. The schedule in the ACC is what it is. Duke's got the top 3 kids in next year's recruiting class. Of course, they have a whole new starting lineup next year, but a lot of talent there. The ACC is just it's the ACC. There's 9 teams made the tournament this year from the ACC. you'll see something similar next year. You go into the season knowing certain things. Those are all things you know going in. And Virginia's challenging itself. They're playing in that tournament in Bahamas with a lot of national level programs, chance for to play 3 games against great opposition. You might lose a game or 2 there. That comes with playing good opponents. So hopefully and we haven't seen the rest of the schedule come out yet. But hopefully we challenge ourselves a little more. There's talk about George Washington being added in another home and home, starting at home this year. Maybe we'll see another marquee team or 2 added to the schedule in November, December. So you want to play those games. You got to get. That's how you get better. We know that. That's how Tony likes to challenge himself in November and December. But for me, I think the key to next season is going to be, we know from 1 to 7, maybe 1 to 8, Virginia is as talented as anybody in the country. Can we develop another player or 2? Can we get it's a little bit deeper bench? Because one thing I think that you see these Tony's teams, they play so hard offensively, they play so hard defensively. You just don't want to see them lose it at the end of the season like we've seen a couple seasons end a little prematurely. And so I think if we can see Tony build some confidence in his bench, develop a couple more guys, that's going to be the key to me. And I don't, I'm with you, Scott. I almost don't care. You're not going to see 31-2 again. So go into that thinking that, and let's just see some good basketball in late February, March, because that's when it's key. Get rolling at the right time of year. And I think that if Virginia can field its key players, if everybody's healthy when the NCAA tournament starts next year, the guys that we know are going to be important to this mix, this Virginia team is as good as anybody in the country, and they should have a chance for success next March and next April.
Absolutely. Basketball, if you think about it, is more in line, kind of correlates more with baseball, college baseball. Certainly football, because football you lose a couple games and you're off the radar for that final playoff picture. But basketball, you can lose games, and you can lose games early on. You can lose games in any part of the season. You can recover from it. Baseball the same way. If you look at just take in our baseball program, UVA baseball. We had one of the best pitching staffs probably ever assembled in college baseball. I think we ended up in the mid-50s win total with the Holson-led team.
Yeah.
We did not win a national championship. We were lucky in the year that we did win a national championship. We were lucky to even make the ACC tournament. I think that team finished with mid-40 wins, but a national championship. So basketball is more of a process that you're shooting towards the end of the season, playing as well as you can, staying injury-free. Much like college baseball, not so much in football though.
Yeah, it's a it's a sport where you play a regular season, and then when the NCAA tournament starts, everybody's 0-0, literally. And we know that now. UVA fans know that better than any other fan base out there. Doesn't matter what you did, 31-2 doesn't mean anything. You're playing a 16 seed, they can beat you. So it's all about. And you mentioned that 2015 national championship baseball team. They struggle. They probably shouldn't have made the tournament that year, much less won the thing. But they happened at the right times. Kind of like hockey. I think there's a similarity to hockey here too. In hockey, where Stanley Cup playoffs are going on right now, you got a hot goalie. Doesn't matter what you were in the regular season. If you got a hot goalie, you can win that cup and raise it above your heads. In baseball, that year in 2015, Virginia, struggled all season long. Nathan Kirby got hurt. He was the stud pitcher for that team. But Connor Jones was maybe a freshman, or I think he may have actually been a sophomore that year. He came into his own, became an ace that year. Brandon Waddell was up and down that season, but by the time the NCAA tournament started, he was an ace. Josh Spores, he had ace stuff all along. He put it all together. So all of a sudden, you had 3 pitchers, and then Kirby came back in the World Series. You had 4 elite pitchers on this otherwise struggling, awful-looking team. And in baseball, it's all about pitching. With Virginia basketball, similarity. hey, they play defense. Pitching controls baseball. The goalie controls hockey. Virginia's defense can control if they can, put all their guys out there. And so, yeah, it's not about glary records. Let Duke, if Duke wants to go out and do whatever Duke's going to do next year, let them do it. But what Virginia needs to do, and what we need to start thinking about as a fan base too, is number one seeds are awesome. They banners are nice. ACC championship banners, everything are nice. What we want right now, is an NCAA banner up there, and there are ways you can go out and win that. And let's see how we progress. Next year's team is going to be, even if there's no Keyshawn Woods, next year's team is going to be really, really good. You get Keyshawn Woods, it may be the most talented team we've ever seen in Charlottesville, but you still got to go out there and play the games. We like being in this position where we can say, we can maybe improve upon a 31-3 team, but we've got to still go out there and have the right approach next February, March, and in April. I think they can do it, but there's still a lot to happen between that. It's only April. We're breaking this stuff down now, Scott. We're almost a year out from it, but that's where our fan base is, I guess.
Yeah, when 30 wins is not good enough. Or college baseball, when we're looking at a UVA team that is, everyone thinks is a dumpster fire this year, or there's a lot of negativity around it, but yet in reality, they just took 2 or 3 from a very good Louisville team. They're a very young team that's got a lot of injuries. The baseball program's in good shape, but when you've raised the bar up high, that tends to where maybe you're not so knowledgeable fan base. That's where they tend to linger, is up high, and anything below that, they look at it as the team's falling off, falling back and trending downward or whatever. But for the more knowledgeable fans that's been around a while, you realize that you're not always going to have 30-win seasons in basketball. You're not always going to have 50-win seasons in baseball, but it's the progression. It's the process of what you're playing for, and I think that's what's going to take place next year in the UVA men's basketball.
Yeah, you mentioned baseball, Scott. I thought while you were talking, I looked it up. That series win last weekend. Suddenly, this UVA team, which as of 2 weeks ago was 125th in the RPI, 74th in the RPI, so that's not still a good, safe place to be. But you got some guys coming off injury. You've got particularly Noah Murdoch started. He only pitched 2 innings on Sunday, but get him back in the fold. Eventually, get some of those guys from McCarthy comes back from injury, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah. Don't sleep on this year's UVA team. I think they still got a chance to sneak their way back into a tournament, and we know what UVA baseball teams do when they sneak their way into tournaments. They surprise people. So don't overlook.
The other thing they have going too is they've got opportunities because they're playing some very high-ranked teams. This weekend they play Clemson. Yeah. So you've got a chance to really bump. Today's rain out down at ODU might have been a blessing because ODU's RPI was somewhere in the 250s. Wasn't much of a chance for Virginia to improve their RPI even going down to Norfolk and winning. But this weekend they've got Clemson. I think they've got Florida State still on the schedule. So they clearly control their own destiny, in my mind. You win that series against Clemson, you win another series against Florida State, and all of a sudden they're back in the mix, have a good showing in the ACC tournament, provided they make it, and I guess they would make it if they won a couple of series. Then they're back, certainly back in the mix again.
Yeah, funny how that can be. That's how baseball works. You get a chance to, if the season's long enough where you have a chance to build yourself back up there, and that come from behind win on Sunday, very important part of that. So, I think.
One quick note, Chris, before I did read today that speaking of transfers, NC State, Yurtseven has, I forget his first name, Omar, transferred to Georgetown.
I saw that, yes, and I can't figure that out. God, that kid, when Virginia played NC State back in mid-January, right after he had those 2 great games against Duke and Clemson, and you're game planning for that guy. I mean, you're doing everything you can do to stop your 7, and all of a sudden, he transfers out. That caught me by that's a big time surprise for me.
Yeah, and State had a good year, and their coach was, in the running, received votes for coach of the year in the conference. State certainly appeared to be a team on the rise, but that was surprising. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, the comings and goings news. That's he's a undergrad, so he's got to sit out a year. That's part of that surprise too. So, yeah, that's an odd move. That makes you feel like he kind of got run off, which makes no sense, or there's some disharmony there in Raleigh that you wouldn't like to see either. So no way about that. Is that a good story for NC State after that surprise season and Kevin Keats had that program moving in the right direction, and you lose a big guy like that. I don't know what to make of that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's I thought I think I saw that news a couple of days ago, and just can't figure that one out at all. That I would not have put him in the transfer market at all. So yeah, that definitely caught by surprise. So I think on that note, Scott and I will get back together if there's any news on Keyshawn Woods. We'll jump back in and do a quick podcast to break that news down, and whatever the case may be, I guess with that news, we'll talk some more UVA sports. We've got baseball and footballs and spring practice, all that kind of stuff too. So, but for Scott German, I'm Chris Graham. We'll sign off. Wahoo wah.